The sentence will be that Ms. Franke serve 4 counts, 4 1 to 15-year sentences based on her convictions for 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. Again, they will be served consecutively pursuant to the parties' agreement and the applicable statute. Under the applicable statute, the court finds that that consecutive sentences are appropriate. Ms. Hildebrandt, your conduct in this case was disastrous for these children. Adults are supposed to protect children. You didn't do that in this case. In this case, you terrorized children, and the results have been tragic. And the court finds that it is appropriate that you serve a prison sentence. The court imposes 4 1 to 15-year sentences to be, again, served consecutively for each of the 4 counts of aggravated child abuse.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is official. Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt have officially been sentenced for abusing the 2 youngest Franke children. It has been quite a journey filled with revelations of shocking acts of abuse and manipulation. Not to mention all the drama in and out of the court. Let's dive into the Franke case as it comes to its long-awaited conclusion. First, a total recap of the case. It is almost impossible to imagine a time when Ruby Franke was the popular mommy vlogger who ran the now-defunct YouTube channel 8 Passengers with her now-estranged husband, Kevin Franke. At its peak, the channel boasted over 2 million subscribers, and it routinely chronicled the family life with their 6 children. However, as time passed, Franke ceased posting content due to severe backlash from online communities regarding her strict parenting methods. But as you now know, worse things were underway. Eventually, she joined forces with Jodi Hildebrandt, a now disgraced mental health counselor. The two met through Connections, Jodi's life coaching organization. It all began when Ruby and Kevin started experiencing problems in their marriage. They then made the decision to see a therapist. That therapist turned out to be Jodi, and the bishops of the Mormon Church reportedly recommended her highly. After Kevin and Ruby thought their oldest son Chad was displaying serious behavioral issues, Jodi also had sessions with him. She was the one who originally suggested their contentious decision to send him to the wilderness behavior camp over a normal juvenile prank.
That was 7 months ago. Maybe you need longer without a bedroom.
It was not funny.
Russell got the big bedroom and Chad got the smaller bedroom. And Russell's bigger bedroom also had a bathroom. But what you guys didn't know was Chad didn't get any room. He didn't get anything. He was sleeping on the floor in the family room. Abby, we took the phone away from Abby in November. And you may never get the phone back.
Probably not.
No, I have no friends.
You can play with friends.
No, like I don't have friends.
I don't have friends either.
I literally like told my friends I'm not hanging out with them anymore.
It's because
They say some pretty messed up stuff.
I don't even know where they live. They're pretty far away.
So, summer goal, become the best athlete I possibly can.
It really is starting to look like she may have been responsible for many of their parenting choices. In order to teach her clients to live in truth, Jodi founded a self-help therapy program called Connections. Ruby eventually became entangled in the program and came to the conclusion that she and her kids were living in what Jodi referred to as distortion. Jodi coined that phrase to refer to anything she thought was bad about people, including addiction, codependency, dishonesty, and other human traits. Both women must have forged a close friendship. Before long, Ruby became Jodi's business partner. She served as a co-host for Connections and started promoting radical ideas about living in truth. The closer they became, the more Ruby distanced herself and her children from everyone, including her husband Kevin. Just like the 8 Passenger channel, Connections did have its fair share of critics who raised questions about their teachings. Many people saw the potential dangers of the teachings. But we don't think anyone actually anticipated that Ruby and Jodi would actually turn to physically harming Ruby's own children. Why August of 2023, this seemingly unbreakable partnership crumbled right before our very eyes, and it began with one of the children escaping. Ruby's 12-year-old son fled from Hildebrandt's residence and sought refuge at a neighbor's house, who then contacted emergency services.
911, the address of your emergency. Okay, and the phone number you're calling from. Tell me exactly what's happened.
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help. And he's said he just came from a neighbor's house, and we know there's been problems at this neighbor's house. He's emaciated, he's got tape around his legs, he's hungry, and he's thirsty.
Okay. Is your door locked?
No, I'm sitting outside with him on the front patio.
Okay, cool.
His ankles are taped up, and he won't tell us why.
Okay.
But he has duct tape around each ankle. Yeah, there's sores around them. I think there's a good chance he's been... Oh, and he has them around his ankles. I mean, his wrists as well. Okay, this boy has been... He needs... This kid has obviously been... I think he's been detained. He's obviously covered in wounds.
Okay. Let's get the paramedics headed over that way, okay?
Oh, that's a good idea, too.
The child arrived malnourished and bore injuries from being bound over long periods of time. As expected, law enforcement intervened, rescuing him and his 9-year-old sister, who was also found malnourished and injured. It was revealed that Franke and her children had been residing with Hildebrandt. Subsequently, both women were arrested and charged with 6 counts of aggravated child abuse. Interestingly, Ruby Franke said that Jodi Hildebrandt was never her business partner. She explained that Jodi started off as a counselor and then a paid mentor, but never a business partner. Remember, the Connections website had her listed as an employee. Not to mention the several videos she and Jodi proudly put out there with regard to their cult-like teachings. Notably, a video featuring Franke and Hildebrandt was filmed in the house just 2 days prior to the incident. This indicated awareness of the situation, so there was no way Ruby could pin it all on Jodi Hildebrandt. Months later, Franke and Hildebrandt each pleaded guilty. Before Franke's plea, her attorneys released a statement attributing much of the blame to Hildebrandt. They asserted that Hildebrandt systematically isolated Ruby Franke while also distorting her moral compass through prolonged influence. In the end, Ruby Franke ultimately pleaded guilty to 4 of the 6 charges, with 2 being dropped. Her guilty pleas encompassed inflicting injuries on her children that amounted to physical torture, injuries causing severe emotional harm, and a combination of injuries that constituted one of the charges. As part of her agreement, Ruby committed to testifying against Jodi Hildebrandt. That said, she formally entered her guilty plea December 19, 2023. In her own words, "With my deepest regret and sorrow for my family and my children." Guilty. Subsequently, on December 27th, Jodi Hildebrandt also pleaded guilty to the same charges in court.
Then, Ms. Hildebrandt, how do you plead to count 1, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony?
Guilty.
And to count 3, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony?
Guilty.
To count 5, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony?
Guilty.
And to count 6, also aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony?
Guilty.
Forward to February 2024, it was time for their sentencing. Notably, each aggravated child abuse charge carried a sentence ranging from 1 to 15 years in prison. Both women, in their plea agreements, consented to serve prison time, with the understanding that their sentences for each charge would be served consecutively. However, the duration is yet to be determined. It is important to note that under Utah law, while the judge can set a range for the sentences and determine whether they should run consecutively or concurrently, the exact duration of their prison terms is left to the discretion of the Board of Pardons and Parole, and said dates will only be decided later down the line. On February 23, 2024, the sentencing proceedings for Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt commenced. Washington County Attorney Eric Clark delivered a statement to the court. It was a very vivid description of the environment these children had endured.
She committed horrible acts of child abuse. From May to August in 2023, Ms. Franke and her business partner held her 2 children, ages 9 and 11, turning 12, in a concentration camp-like setting. The children were regularly denied food, water, beds to sleep in, and virtually all forms of entertainment.
He confirmed that the children were systematically deprived of food, water, proper bedding, and virtually all forms of entertainment. They were kept in isolation, concealed from visitors, and even worse, coerced into performing strenuous physical tasks. Carrying heavy loads, enduring prolonged wall sights, and engaging in outdoor manual labor without adequate protection from the scorching summer heat, these were the living conditions of the 2 Franke children in the Hildebrandt home. This, of course, did not include the physical abuse they endured. The 12-year-old in particular was frequently bound ever since his first attempt to escape in July.
Forced to stand outside on a cement patio in the summer heat for hours and even days at a time. They were beaten, and the 12-year-old was regularly bound hand and foot after he attempted to run away in mid-July. Heaven only knows how much longer he could have survived in that situation.
The extent of their suffering is unimaginable, and it resonates with the harrowing details outlined in the respective plea agreements of both women. Interestingly, Clark also noted a contrasting response between Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt upon their arrest. According to him, despite the severity of her actions, Ruby Franke had demonstrated remorse by consenting to serve consecutive prison terms. She was also more than willing to cooperate with the state against Jodi Hildebrandt. But despite this cooperation, Clark still deems consecutive terms appropriate in her case. We mean, it's impossible to think of leniency when you consider the gravity of the abuse inflicted by Ruby and Jodi Hildebrandt. Now it's worth noting that prior to Jodi's guilty plea, Ruby had already agreed to testify against her. While this does not absolve her of responsibility, don't you think it sheds light on the context surrounding Jodi's cooperation? It is possible that she only entered that plea because she saw no better way out of her situation. Subsequently, Ruby Franke's attorney, Lamar Winwood, addressed her transformation since their initial encounter. He acknowledged her initial defensiveness and indoctrination, but emphasized her subsequent realization of her actions and a notable readiness to accept accountability. Following that, the court heard from Ruby Franke herself. I would like to make a statement without any intent to change my stipulated sentence. For the past 4 years, I've chosen to follow counsel and guidance that has led me into a dark delusion. My distorted version of reality went largely unchecked, as I would isolate myself from anyone who challenged me. I was led to believe that this world was an evil place filled with cops who control hospitals that injure, government agencies that brainwash, church leaders who lie in lust, husbands who refuse to protect, and children who need abused. My choice to believe and behave with this paranoia culminated in criminal activity, for which I stand before you today, ready to take accountability. Jodi Hildebrandt was never my business partner, nor did she ever employ me. I have never received wages from her or connections. Jodi was employed as my son's counselor in 2019, and in 2020, I paid her to be my mentor. It is important to me to demonstrate my remorse and regret without blame. I take full accountability for my choices, and it is my preference that I serve a prison sentence. Next, Ruby thanked a number of people. She thanked the police for dutifully rescuing her children and thanked the medical professionals who treated them afterward. But she didn't stop there. She also thanked her arresting officer. According to her, she only realized the error of her ways when the cuffs were slapped on her. At some point, she also apologized to her family and friends. She acknowledged their disappointment and anger towards her and apologizes for bringing the dark cloud upon them. To Kevin Franke, she said, "Kevin, my husband of more than 23 years, you are the love of my life. So sorry to leave it to you to finish, but we both started together. The ending of our marriage is a tragedy and a wound around my heart, and I'll never be able to have my babies. Over the past 4 years, I was in a deep undercurrent that led us to danger. I never want you into darkness knowingly. I was so disoriented that I believed dark was light and light was wrong. I would do anything in this world for you. My willingness to sacrifice all for you was monstrously manipulated into something very ugly. I took from her all that was soft and safe and good. I took from me your mother. How terrifying this must have been for you, my cry for hating their tender souls. You are so precious to me. I'm sorry. Notably, Kevin Franke has actually filed for divorce. A producer for Law and Crime, Kathy Russon, who was in that courtroom during the sentencing, reported that Kevin Franke was present in the courtroom and cried at different points during her statements.
And willing to serve a prison sentence as long as it takes to continue unraveling all of this information I have believed and bought, swallowed, and acted out, and for my family to heal and for the community to heal. And I understand this is going to take time. I'm committed to continuing my learning until all of my toxic layers are shed, and I am ready to re-enter as a contributing member of our beautiful society.
We know defendants often come up with the most touching statements prior to their sentencing. But one could argue that Ruby Franke's statement has a genuine twist to it. Genuine or not, it can never diminish the severity of her actions nor negate the need for punishment. Now, the judge has officially commenced Ruby Franke's sentencing. The judge stated that Ruby Franke serves 4 counts. That is 4 1 to 15-year sentences, all of which are based on her convictions for 4 counts of aggravated child abuse.
Will be that Ms. Franke serve 4 counts, 4 1 to 15-year sentences based on her convictions for 4 counts of aggravated child abuse.
He emphasized that she would have to serve those sentences consecutively. Like we mentioned earlier, the judge cannot determine the exact prison term under Utah law. The power to do that lies with the Board of Pardons and Paroles. The maximum potential sentence, however, will be 30 years in prison for either Jodi Hildebrandt or Ruby Franke, although it remains uncertain if they will receive the maximum penalty. When Ruby Franke's official sentencing was done, the courts moved on to the sentencing for Jodi Hildebrandt. Once again, Eric Clark, the prosecutor, addressed the court. His statement regarding Jodi mirrored that of Ruby, recounting the similar abuse suffered by the children. However, his words were particularly pointed against Jodi Hildebrandt. He noted that while Franke displayed remorse following her arrest, the same cannot be said for Hildebrandt. Clark emphasized that Hildebrandt showed little to no remorse for her actions. Recorded telephone conversations, which will be provided to the Board of Pardons and Parole, revealed that Hildebrandt repeatedly portrayed herself as the victim.
She claimed that she is the victim and the children are the perpetrators. She has gone so far as to say that the things said in this proceeding and covered by the media today will be full of lies.
Clark then established the fact that Jodi Hildebrandt needs to be incarcerated for a long time as she poses a significant threat to the community. He maintained that stance for the following reasons. First was the severity of the abuse she inflicted on young children. Second is her belief that everything she did was justified and her imprisonment was wrong. Third is the fact that her background as a therapist and her proficiency in using online resources to influence others were all used to carry out the evil acts. The prevailing notion that Jodi Hildebrandt manipulated Franke into abusive actions was established that day in court. According to prosecutor Eric Clark, Jodi Hildebrandt posed a greater danger to society than Ruby Franke. Remember that Ruby's sister, Julie Griffiths-Deroux, has expressed a similar level of discomfort with Jodi and the teachings that Ruby was bringing to family events. She recalled how weird it all seemed in the beginning, and how uncomfortable Jodi's teachings made the family.
3 years ago, Ruby, everything was great. It seemed to be fine anyway. We were a typical family. She was getting some therapy counseling because their family needed it, which I think is great. However, I think you need to get it from a great source. Read the reviews. Jodi Hildebrandt and her website or therapy style, I don't know what you want to call it, connections, was not a great resource. And we all saw it. We all felt weird about this Jodi lady. We weren't comfortable with it. We didn't like it. We didn't like the teachings Ruby was bringing to the family functions, and we were this close to telling her, if you come to our family events anymore, we do not want to hear what you were learning through connections because we don't like it. We never did say that to her, but we thought it. Anyway, so 3 years ago, Ruby and I hung out bottling tomatoes, and then a few weeks later, crap hit the fan and she left the family. And she didn't even call me to say, hey, you know, Julie, you're doing this and this, and I don't like it, you're living your life in distortion, so I'm gonna have to take some time away from you. No, literally nothing. She did call my mom and yelled at my mom on the phone for 45 minutes and accused her of things that were not true. It was almost as if Ruby had been making up memories from her childhood. She was trying to grab at anything she could, and she would exaggerate on everything. So she started all of her lies back then, lying to everyone in her life, getting rid of all of her friends and family, and I literally had no contact with her. She wouldn't respond to any texts or emails over the time that I tried reaching out to her. Never got a response from her.
According to Julie, from the moment she aligned with Jodi and her teachings, she began to cut everyone off from her life. From parents to siblings, friends, and even her husband, Kevin Franke. Now, this sentiment appeared to resonate with the judge. Despite Hildebrandt's attorney making a case for her and explaining that she had acknowledged her role in the ugly case, the judge was hardly convinced.
Experience with Ms. Hildebrandt is that she is not the person that she has been portrayed to be. But having said that, she has accepted responsibility in this case.
Mr. Terry, you suggested that there are two sides to every case. I generally agree with you.
Yes, she has acknowledged her role in this case. Yes, she refrained from going to trial out of concern for the emotional well-being of the children. But what if she had not been caught? We believe that Jodi Hildebrandt and her disciple Ruby Franke would still have been hurting those children. Defendants like Jodi Hildebrandt often appear to be more sorry they were caught than sorry for their actions. Regardless of our thoughts on the matter, Jodi stated that she was open to serving an appropriate sentence determined by the state. Nevertheless, the judge questioned whether Hildebrandt truly grasped the impact of her actions on the children. Hildebrandt's attorney Douglas Terry then suggested that both Hildebrandt and Franke were involved in the decision-making process regarding the children's discipline. He tried to play down the theory that Jodi was a master manipulator with regards to the crime. Ultimately, the judge deemed Hildebrandt's conduct inexcusable. He emphasizes the duty of adults, especially those with specialized training, to safeguard children. He characterized her actions as terrorizing the children. Those actions could very well have resulted in more tragic consequences. At the end of the day, the court determined that a prison sentence was warranted. The court imposed 4 1- to 15-year sentences to be served consecutively for each of the 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. As you know, this sentence is similar to that of Ruby Franke.
4 1 to 15-year sentences to be again served consecutively for each of the 4 counts of aggravated child abuse.
After the sentencing, the attorneys had this to say outside the courthouse. First Prosecutor Eric Clark confirms that this was the worst child abuse case that he has encountered in his career.
Worst child abuse you've seen in your career?
Yes, and not just in my career, but in our office's career, in our institutional memory, this is one of the worst child abuse cases we've seen. I hope that Jodi...
He also maintained his stance that Jodi is the bigger evil, and as such, should serve a longer sentence until it is certain she no longer poses a risk to society. Ruby Franke's attorney, on the other hand, seemed to hold a different perspective.
I don't think it's the worst.
Additionally, there's the matter of restitution for both Ruby and Jodi. As you can imagine, Ruby Franke and Jodi will have to pay for the continuous treatment and rehabilitation of the children that they abused. However, when Jodi was sentenced, an injunction prevented her from selling any property to cover the restitution costs. While prosecutors have not yet prepared the restitution report, we believe that the issue will be addressed in due course. The 4 youngest Franke children are currently in the care of DCFS, the Department of Child and Family Services. Hopefully, the end of this saga will bring some peace and comfort to the lives of all involved.